Howdy, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Fort Worth Property Management Podcast. This is episode 6, and this is the first episode in 2026. So we hope you all have had a Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year. I know it's a few weeks late to be saying Happy New Year, but we still caught January. Definitely hope that you all have started your new year off great. We're extremely thankful for all the listeners that we gained in Q4 of 2025 and cannot wait for all the listeners that we're going to gain here throughout 2026. We have some very exciting stuff coming for everybody. So very thankful to have you all here. We're excited to get rolling. This is going to be a great episode. So to start, I am Mason, your host of the Fort Worth Property Management Podcast. I am the Operations and Business Development Manager here at First Choice Property Management in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's episode is one of the most important ones that we're going to film for self-managing landlords because it's a topic where I see the most mistakes. We often onboard self-managing landlords to take over management for their properties, and we see mistakes in a few different ways. But I'd say 8 out of 10 landlords that we bring on who are self-managing make mistakes in this area. So today's topic is going to be documentation. And when I say documentation, yes, I mean the paperwork, I mean photos and records of everything that you need through the entire life of a lease. That's everything from screening an application right at the very beginning to having photo documentation whenever the tenant moves out after a few years. So we're going to hit all of that. And the reason that I decided this topic to start off 2026 is because this is where I see the most mistakes, the most money lost, and the most unnecessary stress by all self-managing landlords. And it's just all unnecessary. Like it doesn't have to happen. If you take the right steps to document everything correctly, it's all avoidable. You can be a really good landlord. You can be fair and you can do the right thing. But if you don't document everything properly, then none of that matters. It all goes right out the window when there's a dispute, a security deposit, disagreement, or even a court situation. All the fairness, all the things that you did right go out the door. And now you have to prove that you didn't do anything wrong. So episode 6 is aimed towards walking you through exactly what documentation every self-managing landlord should be keeping from the moment you take an application all the way until that tenant moves out. Think of this episode as a checklist you should be able to follow step by step through the entire life of the lease. We are super excited to jump into this topic with you today, but I do want to start with our segment Behind Closed Doors. This is a quick segment where we give you a look into the daily operations here at First Choice Property Management. Just kind of keep you up to date with what we have going on, and then also kind of a little bit of accountability to you to how we're growing, our operations of what you would be signing up with in the event you decided to use First Choice for full service management. And so let's start out with our book of business. So currently right now, in middle of January 2026, First Choice Property Management currently manages 500 properties. These are a mix of single family homes and a handful of duplexes, all spread out across Tarrant County and some of the outlying areas around Fort Worth. All of those properties are split between 3 property managers. We did used to have assistant property managers, but we just switched them over, which was implemented in the new year. We switched assistant property managers to resident service coordinators. And now all tenants have a dedicated person that they can go to, and this resident service coordinator position is more tenant facing, whereas the property managers are owner-facing. So we want owners dealing directly with their property managers because this is their business partner. This is their go-to person. And so that's why we made the switch. That's one big project that we had been working on towards the end of the year of 2025. As of right now in January, we have 13 move-ins. On the market, we have 19 houses currently listed for rent. So with 19 houses on the market and 519 properties that we currently manage, that has our vacancy rate at 3.6%, which is really great. We got it below 5%, which a few podcasts back, I think I told you was our goal. So we have 19 on the market right now. Average days on market in Tarrant County is 55 days. This is one of the highest we've seen it in years. The average days on market for First Choice Property Management is currently 48 days. About 3 weeks ago, we were at 38 days. It's now increased to 48 because we got a lot of properties leased at the beginning of the year, which is kind of unlikely for January, but we were able to get houses leased, and we'll never be mad about that. So we have, as I mentioned, we had 13 move-ins this month, so that's a lot of those properties that have been getting leased. And then one big update for y'all is that this year, and especially this quarter, First Choice is kind of having a big Google review push. We implemented KPIs for Google reviews, and we really want to get our Google review number up. We're currently at 281. Our goal is to get 360 by the end of the year. And so all of our team members are pushing for Google reviews with all of our homeowners and our tenants. And so if any of you want to leave us a review based on the podcast or based on the information that you get, please head to our Google page, and we would love to hear your feedback. But leave a 5-star review. That's definitely what we're going for, is 365-star reviews. The average rental price for a single-family home in Fort Worth, Texas is now down to $2,049. About 2 months ago, it was at $2,100. This is an indication of the market as a whole. That means over the last few months, we have seen more and more price decreases as that average lowers. I expect that once we get to spring break, or once we inch closer towards the summertime, that number will start to pick back up as rental prices increase, or as people list a little bit higher to be aggressive during the summertime. Quick market update, update on our company, and that concludes our segment of Behind Closed Doors. Thank you so much for sticking around. Now, let's get into the main topic of today, documentation. So let's start with why it matters. The main reason that we want to provide this to all of our landlords here in Texas is because in Texas, the burden of proof is on the landlord or the property management company. So what does this mean? What is the burden of proof? That means that if there is a disagreement, a dispute, or a court case, it is the homeowner or the property management company's responsibility to be able to prove the condition of the property, the damage that occurred, that notices were properly delivered, that deductions are justified, and the timelines were followed. The burden to prove that all of that was followed correctly is on you and me. It is on the homeowner and the property management company. So, in the event of a security deposit dispute, the tenant saying, "I didn't cause that, it was that way when I moved in," you, as the homeowner, have to have some type of documentation like an inventory and condition form or a picture of how the house looked before the tenant moved in and how the house looked after the tenant moved out. If you have those two things, you're able to prove that the damage was only there after the tenant left and not before they moved in. So, like I mentioned earlier, you can be the nicest landlord in the world. You can lower their rent around Christmas time. You can give them all these gifts. But the second there's a dispute, all that goes out the window. You have to be able to have documentation to prove the condition of the house and that everything was followed correctly, because if you go to a civil dispute, like a court case or something, judges don't rule based on stories. They don't rule based on how great of a landlord that you were. They rule based on documentation. So if you show up in court and you say the tenant damaged the property, the next question they ask is, can you prove the condition it was in before they moved in? They're looking for proof. If you say, I sent them notice to move out of the property, the judge's response is, do you have the proof that it was sent? And if either of those answers is no, then legally speaking, it didn't happen. That is why professional property management companies obsess over documentation. We may send a form to you once a year for you to sign over and over, and it's not overkill, I promise. It's protection. So let's walk through what it actually looks like to document the entire process of leasing your home correctly. And everything that I provide to you is something that First Choice actively does with each property that we manage. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all the appropriate documentation you should be taking through the entire life cycle of a lease. From the very beginning of pre-leasing and screening applications, we'll progress to when you do lease the property, what you should be doing at move-in. We'll then look at when a repair comes up, what type of documentation you should have when a repair is completed. And then we'll progress to the end of the lease when a tenant's either going to renew their lease for another year or when they're going to move out. We'll talk through the entire cycle of a lease and what documentation you should be taking. If you would like us to put together a checklist for you or the entire cycle at a glance or something like that, comment below and we're happy to get you a document like that you should be doing throughout the entire lease. And so number one, we're going to start with pre-leasing documentation. This is documentation you should be collecting well before a tenant ever moves in. First, keep every application, regardless if you approved or denied the renter. Keep them all. Let's set the scene. Your house is currently on the market, you're getting activity, you're receiving applications, and you're screening tenants. That's the phase that we're at right now. So, the type of documentation that you need here is, of course, a rental application. Along with the rental application, you want to gather a credit report, a background check, eviction history, and income verification. All of those items fit under the rental application. The last two things that I would definitely collect are a copy of the tenant's driver's license and a copy of their social security card. You collect all of these for each individual applicant. It's required. Make it your required process for every single applicant. And then, more importantly, keep every application. Whether you approved or denied them, keep every application and everything associated with it. These records protect you from any fair housing claims in the future that a tenant might make. So to give you an example, if a tenant were to submit a fair housing claim saying that you denied their application because of discrimination, whether it was race, gender, marital status, whatever it was, they believe you discriminated against them. Now you're in court. Now the burden of the proof is on the landlord. You have to prove that you did not discriminate against them. Since you have every application that you screened, you simply pull up the credit report or the background check and you will show the judge exactly why you denied their application. That clears you. You're good to go. You didn't discriminate. But can you imagine what would happen if you didn't keep all those applications and a claim like that was made? How would you prove it? And so it's very important that you keep every application and everything that I listed along with the application so that in the event that this ever happens, you're able to prove why exactly you denied that tenant and their application. And then, little life hack, if you do deny a renter based on something on their application, I would notify them via email or text. Inform them that they were denied and give them the reason why. That way it's documented. You can even take a screenshot of it. You can save it in your email address. You have all that record for why they were denied. And then you can even go back to any of the rental applications that you have because you're saving all of them. So it's very important, even from the very beginning, save every application and everything that you require along with it. All right, awesome. So now that you approved a tenant, let's fast forward to the house is now off the market. You selected the renter and they're about to move into the property. Okay? The type of documentation that you should be collecting here are a few different things. The first one, it sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people don't have it, is a fully executed lease agreement. It has to be signed by all parties. So that means all the tenants that you approved and all the homeowners, aka the landlords. It needs to be fully executed. That means all parties signed it. You would be so surprised how many landlords rent their property to a friend of a friend and they say, pay me $2,000 a month. Y'all handle the utilities and the lawn. We'll call it good. Fast forward 3 months in, the friend of the friend stopped paying rent and now they're in trouble. So it sounds silly of me to say, but have a fully executed lease agreement signed by all parties. This will include all addendums, a pet addendum if the tenant has pets, an HOA addendum if your house is in an HOA community, a lead-based paint addendum if your property was built before 1978, and then any other addendum that you may have attached to the end of the lease. Keep record of all of those. This document is extremely important because it directly outlines the agreement between both parties. If you ever run into a problem with a tenant, whether they're not taking care of the property or they're not paying rent, you have this contract signed by the tenants And in the event one of those things happened, you can show it to them and say, here's exactly what you signed. Here's exactly what you agreed to. If you don't uphold your side of the contract, then I'm getting you out. And you're able to do that. Now, you have to do it correctly, but if you don't have a lease agreement, then you're already starting on the wrong foot. So, when you're getting ready to move a tenant in, have a fully executed lease agreement signed by all parties before the tenant moves in. Next, and even more important than the lease agreement, you want to have a move-in condition report, also known as an inventory and condition form. The inventory and condition form is a form provided to landlords by the Texas Realtors Association. This form, it's specifically to document the condition before move-in and after move-out. So what you will do is you'll print the inventory and condition form. You will give it to the renter at move-in, and you will make it mandatory that they return it to you by the 10th day after move-in. So if they move in on the 1st of January, they must return it to you by the 10th of January. What this form is as it plainly states in the title of the form, it documents the inventory of the property and the condition of the property before move-in for the tenants. So what it has, it lists out exterior items like mailboxes, fences, gates, the lawn, the trees, the gutters, the paint, the driveway, the front door, the back door, the deck, the patio. It has all of those items listed and a blank right next to it. This is where the tenant will fill out that the mailbox is bent and broken. The front door has a lot of scratches on it. There are light bulbs missing outside the house. It's meant to document the condition whenever the tenant moves in for the tenant's protection. It then moves to the garage, the entry, the living room, the dining room, kitchen, breakfast nook, halls, family rooms, primary bedrooms. It documents the entire property, each of which have a blank next to it where they will document the condition of all the doors, the walls, the trim, the countertops. All of that stuff has a line item for it to be documented. So it does give the tenants their chance to document how the house looks beforehand, and oftentimes tenants will highlight all of the defects of the property to protect themselves so that they don't have to pay for it when they move out. So if there's a hole in the drywall or if there's a light bulb missing, more than likely they're going to mention it on this form so that they're not responsible for it whenever they move out. Again, it does highlight the condition of the property, and then it also takes inventory. So there is a slot for the tenants to fill out how many keys they were given to the house, how many mailbox keys, how many garage door openers, how many key fobs to HOA amenities, all of that stuff. Also, if there's a washer and dryer, if there's a refrigerator, all of that stuff needs to be documented. So this is one of the most important forms that you as a landlord can have the tenant fill out. So extremely important that you give this to them at move-in and make it due by the 10th day after they move in. They will fill this out, and then right next to everything they fill out, there's a landlord's move-out comments. So you will actually keep the exact copy that they provide to you, and you will fill it out whenever they move out. We'll get to that a little bit later. In addition to everything that this tenant fills out, I want you to do your own as well. You don't have to do the full report to have on hand, but what I would do and what I would make a requirement in your standard process is date and timestamp photos to document the condition of everything in the house room by room. So right before a tenant moves in, you're going to have 3 different forms of documentation as they move in. Fully executed lease agreement, inventory and condition form printed and ready for the tenant to fill out, a full set of property photos to document the entire condition of the house, date and timestamp. There's a very good app that you can download on your phone that automatically date and timestamps any photo that you take within its app. The app's name is quite literally titled Timestamp Camera. I believe it was put out by Instagram. It is called Time-Stamped Camera. Basically, you open it, it date and timestamps the exact that photo was taken and also gives a location. So I would download that and take about 100 photos of everything. Take it room by room and not just wide photos. I want you to take pictures of the trim, of the door stoppers, of every wall, of the inventory condition form and all the keys on the countertop. Document exactly how the property looks whenever a tenant moves in. Even to the smallest minute detail, I want you to have files of, because fast forward to 2 years from now, if the tenant moves out and all 20 door stoppers are removed, we've seen this before. If all 20 door stoppers are removed and you have to replace them and it costs you a couple $100 to do, and they dispute that, you have to have proof that door stoppers were there before they moved in. Nobody's thinking to take a picture behind a bedroom door to show door stoppers, right? So I know this is a trivial example and you may not even want to charge your tenant for that, but when it comes down to it, if a tenant disputes their security deposit charges, you need to have proof of how the house looked prior to their move-in. So I want you to take date and timestamp photos of every single inch of your property to document exactly how it looks right before they move in. And you might think that seems a little bit excessive, but trust us, it's not. You would be surprised by the disputes that we receive from tenants. Sometimes tenants leave these houses. They don't get a cleaner. It's really dirty. It's gross. We deduct a couple $100 for a house cleaning, and these tenants are pissed. And so now we have to prove to them that it was clean when they moved in and that it wasn't clean when they moved out. You can see my whole dilemma. And so I don't think it's excessive. I'd rather you over-prepare and not run into this problem than under-prepare, and now you're left out of luck whenever this tenant disputes what's going on. To sum it up, before a tenant moves into the property, you need to have 4 things. All the applications on file that you received while you were listed on the market, an executed lease agreement signed by all parties and have all addenda attached, have the tenants fill out an inventory and condition form, and have it back to you 10 days after they move in. And then you, as the landlord, need to take a full set of date and timestamp photos of absolutely everything in the property, every inch of the house. You have those 4 things before a tenant moves in, you are setting yourself up for so much success and reducing your risk so much. And so I would have those things prior to a tenant moving in, and then have the inventory and condition form with you whenever they move into the house to give to them. Okay, cool. So you did it. You documented everything correctly. You have everything in a Google Drive folder or in your folders app on your computer. Now the house is rented. You have a tenant in there who's paying rent. Everything's going good. What could go wrong, right? What kind of documentation would I need while the tenant's living in the house? Well, once a tenant moves in, documentation does not stop. So the first thing that you want to keep logs of is communication. If you can do your best to have pertinent conversations via email or text whenever possible, that'll protect you a little bit more than verbal conversations. Now, not every single conversation needs to be documented, but the important ones, like when if they have to do a payment plan and pay rent late, or if you're notifying them that they had an HOA violation, I would definitely do all of that via email or text. And then if something does have to take place over the phone, give them a follow-up in writing. Send them a text, something like, just confirming from our conversation today that you will be paying rent on January 15th instead of the 1st, or something like that, so that you have proof in quote-unquote writing, just in case this ever comes up. So the first thing, while a tenant's living in the house, try and document everything via email or text. Text is one of the most popular methods of communication with renters right now, so it shouldn't be extremely hard to do that. But I would get everything in writing just in case you ever need it. Not saying you will, but it's good to at least have record. All right, perfect. So next, when a tenant is living in the property, you want to keep documentation of any lease violations or notices. Self-managing landlords tend not to file the official form, like a breach of lease or late rent notices, but that method of communication happens somehow. If a tenant's late on rent, I know you landlords are texting the tenants letting them know. And so keep documentation for any time that they paid rent late, that they had an HOA lease violation or breach of lease. An example of this is if they get a new puppy without telling you and you visit the house. If they get a new puppy without telling you, that's a breach of lease until you update the documentation and stuff like that. So always keep copies of any notices or any documents that are sent to them. To give you an example of why it's important to have these records is because if you ever have to evict a tenant for non-payment of rent, sometimes the judge will look at their previous payment history and see if this has been a trend or not. And if you have documentation showing how many times throughout the lease that the tenants paid rent late, you're more likely to be granted that eviction instead of having to go longer without a rental payment. So I would definitely keep track of all of those documents throughout the lease. And then it's inevitable, repairs come up. So I want you to keep any repair records like maintenance requests, vendor invoices, and then photos before and after the repair taking place. These will help you not only with like your tax returns every year to get all the deductions you need, but it also protects you in the event that they claim that you neglected or failed to properly maintain the property. Yes, this does happen. We know exactly how tenants think. We know that when they move out, they're going to say, well, back in June when the AC went out, your AC person took forever to come out and fix whatever was going on. And all you have to do is pull up your records and say, nope, you texted us on June 1st that there was a problem. On June 2nd, the HVAC guy came out and fixed it. Here are the photos that are date and time stamped to prove you're wrong. And I know that seems a little bit dramatic, but it happens. We see this every day. And I get countless calls from homeowners who run into the same problem. And they're instantly saying, let me hire First Choice Property Management to come in and fix this mess that was created. Unfortunately, we can't if you don't have the documentation beforehand. We can come in and make sure this doesn't ever happen again, but we're a little late on the first time it does happen. So with repairs, keep record of all vendors' invoices, photos before and after. And then, of course, while the property is occupied, more than likely you're going to be doing a yearly inspection of the house. For us, this takes place in month 9 or 10 of the lease. This is done with the intention of identifying how the tenant has been taking care of the property and then determining if we should renew to them for another year or not, right? If they're taking care of the house, then we will renew to them. If they're not taking care of the house up to our standards, then we'll get them out after their lease is done. And so during this inspection, it's very important that, of course, you walk the property either with the tenant or if they're not able to make it, it's fine that they're not there. But you want to take as many photos as possible. Again, date and time stamp is extremely important. Take as many photos as you can. Basically mimic the move-in photos that you took initially. If you take those same style photos, you'll be able to document the progression of the house through the lease. You have the photos from the very beginning on how it looked. Now you have photos while they're living in it. And then in the future, if they move out, you'll take another set of photos then, which we'll get to. But during this walk, you want to take as many photos as possible. And so it's very important that you brace them for that. Let them know I will be documenting the current condition of the house. If it's in great shape, you have nothing to worry about, but I am going to take pictures. And then you want to make detailed notes on the condition and the cleanliness. There's no official form to do this on, but you do want to have some type of notes on how it looked while you moved in, and then make your decision. If you're good with the condition, if they're taking care of it, there's not too much wear, renew the lease to them. Or if it's the opposite, if they're not taking care of it, get them out so that you can avoid any future damage. But these yearly inspections, they prevent surprises at move out. They prevent you walking into a house after a year and it absolutely being trashed. These yearly walkthroughs will help you catch smaller issues before they become expensive ones. A tenant will more than likely tell you about some problem that's happening whenever you're walking through the property, as opposed to texting you out of the blue. To recap, during the tenancy, while the tenant is living in the property, make sure to log 4 things. All communication that you can via email or text. Document all lease violations or notices. Keep record of any repair requests or repair records along with photos of what happened. And then take a full set of property condition photos at your yearly walkthrough that are date and time stamped. That part's extremely important. So keep those 4 things while a tenant is occupying the home. You're going to set yourself up for success. And then, like I alluded to before, after your yearly walkthrough, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either 1, you're going to like the condition, they're going to be a good renter, and you're going to renew for another year. Or 2, you're going to see some things that you didn't like, you're not going to renew the lease to them for another year and they're going to move out. Lease renewal or move out. We're going to go through those two avenues next and what type of documentation you should have for each. So let's start with the renewal documentation. This is the slightly easier route. It is also the better route because now you have a tenant who's going to stay for another year, right? And so when it's time to renew the lease, of course, documentation matters at this point as well. So the type of documentation that you want here are two things: the lease renewal or lease extension documentation, and then written tenant acceptance or rejection. Okay, so what this commonly looks like is first you get the exception or rejections. What landlords will type up is an email to the tenants saying, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you were just approved for a lease extension in the property. We would love if you would stay in the property. We do have a few options for you. Option A, you can extend for 2 years at the same rental rate, or option B, you can renew for 1 year at this increased rental rate. That's completely up to you if you offer that or not, but that's typically the email that you send out to the tenant, and then they will respond back, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord. We would like to proceed with option A. Keep the rent the same and we'll renew for 2 years. That right there is written acceptance of a lease renewal. Okay, so you want to keep that portion right there. And then that does not suffice. It's not automatic. You do need to type up a lease renewal or a lease extension. They're both the same thing. Basically, the form will outline how long the current lease agreement that you have with the renter is extending to. So in this case, in the example I just gave you, it'd be for 2 more years. And then it also details out any changes, like a change in rental price, a change in tenancy, or any new addendums, or if you got a pet or something like that. It highlights all of that in the renewal and extension as well. So you want to fill that out, send that to the renter, and then have them sign it. Once it's signed by all parties, it's executed and official. So have those two things: the written acceptance from the tenant and then the lease renewal or extension. You have those two things, you're good for another year. It basically starts over with the tenant living in it. Keep documented everything that we just discussed a little while ago. But lease renewal, it's a great part of the year and requires minimal documentation, but very, very important one. Don't ever rely on a handshake or verbal agreement. That's what, oh my gosh, that's the number one thing that landlords do. The number one thing that landlords do is that they let the lease run out and then they just go on a month-to-month lease with the tenant. It never fails. We bring on a landlord and they said, I've had a tenant for 4 years. Great. Can I see the lease and all the extensions? Well, we've been on a month-to-month for the last 2.5 years, and I don't even remember what rental rate we're at or what this is or what that is. And so this is the number one thing that landlords fail to do. So take the time, do the lease renewal, get them on a proper lease, and make sure you keep all of that documentation. Cool. And then, so that was option A. That was the lease renewal route. Option B is that either that you didn't like what you saw with the tenant and you want to get them out, or life happens, the tenant just has to move, they have to move out of the property. Okay? So move out. This is going to be your move out documentation whenever the tenant finally leaves the property and returns the house to your possession. So the first thing that you need is the notice that they were going to be moving out in whatever form that happened. You must keep that form of documentation somehow. It's either the tenant's written notice to vacate. That's when the tenant tells you, hey, I'm going to be moving out on this date. I'm not renewing my lease. You want to keep documentation of that. Or your notice of non-renewal. The way in which you tell the tenant, we're not renewing your lease, you need to move out. There is an official form that you can fill out. If you do and provide that to them, save that documentation as well. But a lot of times tenants will notify you that they're not renewing either via email or text. So whichever method that they provide to you, screenshot that or save a copy of that, print it out, do whatever you need to, and keep a copy of that notice to vacate. Okay, so they provided you notice. Now they moved out. Let's say the house, they moved all their belongings out. What you're going to do is you're going to get that inventory and condition form that the tenants filled out originally. You're going to have the physical copy in your hands and you're going to walk the property and fill out your portion. So what it is, it's side-by-side line items. One is filled out by the tenants at move-in. One is filled out by the landlord at move-out. And so you're going to walk the property with it completely empty, and you're going to document the condition on this inventory and condition form. You want to write down as many things as you can that differ from when the tenant originally moved in. These items that you write down are going to be beyond normal wear and tear, and they're going to be items that you're able to deduct from their security deposit to fix the house and get it ready to go again for the next renter. So it's very important that you have all of these things documented on the inventory and condition form. That one will be fully complete whenever you walk the property after they move out. The entire form will now be filled out. So that's one thing to keep. And then, just like at your yearly walkthrough, you're now going to take move out photos and videos. Make them date and time stamped. I'll say it a million times. And then try and do the exact same photos as your move-ins when possible. We know you won't get them all perfect, but if you can keep them the same, then you can focus on comparing the move-out photos to the move-in and determine what exactly you need to deduct and how the condition differs to when they originally moved in. You want to focus on damages done to the house, cleanliness, missing items like those door stoppers or appliances if those are gone. Look at trim. Trim can sometimes get a little dirty. They can get eaten up by pets if you have pets. So definitely focus on trim, doors, walls, paint, flooring, stuff like that. You definitely want to keep record of. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take those photos and the condition of that property. You're going to compare it to the condition when the tenant moved in. Everything beyond normal wear and tear, you can deduct from the tenant's security deposit to pay for fixing. So that leads me to my next thing that I want you to document. That is all vendor invoices for turnover work. This will include your handyman who's going to come in and paint the place, any repairs that have to take place for something that's broken, having to hire a junk removal person for all the stuff the tenant left behind, and or a cleaning on the property, hiring professional cleaners to come in. You want to keep invoices for all of those items that took place. And if you do the work yourself, write up an invoice. Write up an invoice for the work that you completed or save the receipts from Home Depot. You need to have record of all of that, because what you're going to do is you're going to take those invoices, you're going to deduct it from the security deposit, and then whatever's left from the security deposit, you're going to furnish back over to the tenant with an itemized receipt for what was deducted on the security deposit. That's required to do by a landlord within 30 days of their move out. That's required for you to complete. And so, of course, when you return a tenant security deposit and it's way less than what they gave you, they're not going to be happy. Some may understand, but they're not going to be happy. So it's very important that you have your proof that my painters charged me this, my cleaners charged me this, my carpet cleaners charged me this. Here's what I have. So it's very important that you have those so that you can itemize all of the security deposit deductions. And then, of course, if there is any disputes that get bigger than just arguing back and forth from tenant and landlord, if they end up proceeding to court, then you have all the documentation that's needed to, one, prove that what you deducted from the security deposit was the invoice price, and that it's a tenant charge, that you can charge them for it, and that it's their responsibility. You did not give them the property in that condition. And so all of these items are extremely, extremely important. You can tell just in the tone of my voice of talking how many times we've run into this problem, and that photos and videos saved our butt. I mean, let's be honest. I can tell you that we're the best property management company in the whole state, which we might as well be. But it is photos and videos that have been saving our butt with a lot of these security deposit disputes, because we can't go back in time and remember every inch of a property. But photos and videos are the best dang thing that we can to document the condition of the property before the tenant moves in. So we do it every time. It's like clockwork, and we never skip it. Never. It's way too important to us and to our landlords to have all this documentation on hand. So I highly recommend all of our landlords to follow in our footsteps, do all this documentation so that you're better prepared just in the event something comes up. Okay, so as we wrap this up, I kind of want to leave us with a different view of why this is important, because at this point, y'all should understand that I'm harping on this because the burden of proof is on the landlord. But one thing is that with documentation, it's not about being difficult. You're not asking above and beyond from these tenants to allow you to take documentation like this. And by no means am I saying that every tenant is awful and that they're going to destroy the house. It's not about being distrusting to tenants. It's just about protecting yourself. And then documentation. In the event of a dispute, documentation removes all emotion from the dispute. It replaces arguments with facts. It replaces the emotion with the cold, hard truth. It'll protect you in a bunch of different ways. It'll save you time, headaches, and of course, it'll save you money. It's extremely important that you have all of that. So again, this was meant for all of our self-managing landlords, all of those with rental properties. And so it's important that in whatever aspect of a rental property that you have, whether you are completely renting your single family home, whether you have a duplex and you're renting out the other side, whether you have a fourplex and you have 4 different tenants, or our Uncle Ronnie, Cameron and I's Uncle Ronnie has a single family home that he lives in, and then he has a garage in the backyard that has an ADU, an additional detached unit that tenants live in. Even if you have, by the way, Uncle Ronnie, if you're listening to this, hello, hope you're doing great. Thank you for listening. But even in that instance, even though you just have somebody who moved into your back house or moved into your ADU, you still want to be doing all this documentation so that you're protected, because even friends of a friend or family friends or even family sometimes will dispute what you have going on. We made this podcast to kick off 2026 to make sure that our landlords and our self-managing landlords are protected. Bottom line, we want to make sure that you're protected. And so I challenge each of you, if you're managing, if you have a rental property, or even if you have a different property manager, I encourage you, audit the current process. After listening to this episode, audit what you're doing. Ask yourself, am I doing this? Do I have this documentation? Is it organized enough? If I go to court, can I prove that the tenant caused this? Genuinely ask yourself. And if that feels overwhelming, that's okay. You'd be surprised how many landlords don't have it. I talk to them every day, and that's exactly why we are here. We're here to help, and we're here to give guidance. So even if you're not ready to sign up for full service management, shoot me a message, and I'll tell you how to keep this stuff organized. I'll give you the software. I'll give you whatever you need to keep it organized. Or if you just want somebody to handle this whole process for you, that's why professional property management exists. Give us a call. We'll happily take over it for you because we have this down like clockwork. So to kind of sum it all up, it's very important that you understand every moment through the cycle of a lease requires documentation. Unfortunately, you don't take a day off from documentation. If something comes in, you want to document it, even from before a renter moves in all the way until that renter that you approved moves out. You want to have documentation for it all. Like I said, if you'd like this in a printable PDF of all the types of documentation that you should have, or if you want a checklist to keep on you while you're renting your property through the year, let me know. I'm happy to get one over to you. If you just comment below, we are checking all of our comments. And then we do have a slate of topics to talk through in 2026, but we definitely want to listen to our listeners. So if you have a topic that you're struggling with, if you want to hear about different things. I had an inquiry from a friend who listens about land leases, about leasing out your property to hunters, to deer hunt, or to do different things on. So these are all different ideas that we're tossing around in the air. If there's a specific topic that you want to learn about and get our take on, leave a comment, shoot me an email, shoot me a text, and we will definitely throw it in the lineup for this year. But outside of that, we're super excited for 2026. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first episode of 2026. This is episode 6 of the Fort Worth Property Management Podcast. I am your host, Mason Arispe. I'm super excited to tackle this year together. If you found this helpful, make sure you follow the show, share it with a friend who maybe has a rental property and you know they're the type of person who's not documenting their stuff like this. Send this to them because this is who it's for. So they definitely need to hear it. And again, we appreciate you so much for listening today. I am Mason with First Choice Property Management, and I will see you in the next episode. Y'all have a great rest of your day.